Enough! For fuck's sake!
Ring, hello, Sims and Virgins, and welcome back to Craft. Midsummer game!
It's midsummer time, baby, and we got some dancing dogs in the background, and we got shitcoins going to the moon, no, to the floor. And in fact, today's video will be going over the top 5 most requested charts, which are, as always, or at least as they have been, Solana, Ethereum, XRP, Bitcoin, and wait, I'm missing one. Sooie. Yeah, Sooie's going to be in there as well. Anyways, before we get into it, I actually do want to say I'm heavily considering stopping doing the weekend videos, just because, you know, it seems like kind of a very much downtime, especially recently, you know, just very, very little interest in it. And I don't know, we could probably do them during the week instead. Anyways, let's get on to some Solana here first, and let's begin with the top-down look, which we have been looking at this one as likely in a corrective phase, putting in this as a local weekly high back in middle of May and working its way back down towards those April lows. Maybe not lower than those April lows, but likely towards those April lows, as the large plans kind of, you know, have going over here. Now, this thing is still working within a downwards weekly channel. And yes, these do typically break out to the upside over enough period of time. However, as long as it's within the channel, it is in a downtrend, and the trend is your friend, and the trend is to the downside. And that means we should be expecting more downside, especially after the next local and lower high was printed alongside pretty much everything else that we're going to be seeing on the higher term timeframes. Weekly stochastic momentum is going to be freshly turning down upon this week's closure on Sunday, assuming that Solana is still below 156 and 3/4. Right now it's trading 140. So, you know, I mean, crazier things have happened, obviously, but I would say that that seems rather likely as of this point in time. The 5-day time frame also going to be showing downside pressure as long as Solana is below 172 and change. The 3-day time frame also showing downside pressure below 146. The 2-day time frame also showing downside pressure below 154 1/4, and the daily time frame also showing downside pressure as long as it's below 148 1/4. And the general rule that we've been having on this channel for quite some time now, mostly particular to Ethereum. However, we can apply the same rule to Solana, and as we'll see a little bit later, pretty much everything else. The monthly stochastic oscillator, as long as this thing is positioned to the downside, it's not a time to be looking for a new massive all-time highs, bull market rally, banana zone up my Angus, you know, all these sort of things. That is, it's always a potential, but very, 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 very far away here as monthly stochastic momentum continues to the downside upon this month's closure, which is less than 10 days now, assuming that Solana is going to be below 237 and change, which would seem very likely to me. Again, crazier things have happened, but let's go over what would effectively make me reconsider all of these views and be back on the Bula side for Solana, the Solana tokens, whatever the fuck they're called, Solana. Anyways, daily price action pivots. The last recent pivot was Monday, the 16th of June's high. That is at 158 3/4, meaning that as long as Solana is below there, you know, trend is to the downside. All bounces are just that, bounce before getting ready to go lower. And like I said, the weekly time frame still working on a channel here as well. And the top side of that channel from the current trajectory would be about that same number. So I do like that number in terms of confirming a reversal. But, you know, again, the trend is your friend here, and it is to the downside on every time frame that really matters at this point. In fact, this one looks like it even wants to take another leg down probably in this next week, if I had to guess. You know, I do think that these moves are happening relatively soon, you know, before the end of this month, which is really not that far away now. So that begs the question, you know, how far or where low? Well, in this case, I'd still be saying the same thing, you know, anywhere close to the April lows of 2025. I don't think it's going to go lower than that. But, you know, if Solana got down to like somewhere between 125 to 110-ish region, you know, should try for another bounce there. And hey, if that bounce brings it back above one of the important pivots that we spoke about to the upside, then okay. You know, we got very likely a nice rally on our hands, but until that happens, the trend is your friend, and well, it's not gonna be friends to the Solana crypto token holders of the world, I guess. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into Ethereum. This one has also been massive disappointment, not just for this cycle, but certainly in recent times as well. Or maybe I should invert that statement, but you get what I'm saying. Ethereum, which has been a darling of prior cycles, now just acting as, you know, your average shitcoin for this current cycle, which fair enough. I mean, to be fair, from from the last cycle, 2021, Ethereum did not perform in a crazy manner to the upside. It barely overperformed Bitcoin, I believe it was. In fact, actually, I don't even think it did overperform Bitcoin or outperform Bitcoin because the ratio was down the whole way through. So perhaps even that's wrong. But anyways, my point is that Ethereum, saw an explosive first cycle. Then after that, not much here. So is it uncharacteristic for Ethereum not to be falling through to the upside? I guess. But as Ethereum goes here, this is where we got that monthly stochastic rule, which as long as it was positioned to the downside, which happened May of last year, so more than a year now, we say, hey, I'm not looking for this thing to switch around into any sort of a bullish manner as long as this thing's positioned to the downside. The current pivot is just below 3,100. Again, there's 9 days left in this trading month to go, so a lot of things can happen. But I would say that as of right now, it seems rather unlikely for it to flip back around and reclaim 3,100. Thus, I would still look at Ethereum, Solana, well, both of them really, but Ethereum in this case as still skeptical and not great coming into early July. We'll see where that pivot comes down to in July. I assume it's going to come down, but the one bull hopium I can kind of find here is that to open up July, the monthly stochastic oscillator should hit this long-term trendline regression, which has found the last macro cycle lows, which is kind of a weird time for it to be hitting something like that, especially when this has been mostly a macro bull cycle for the last year for everything else not named Ethereum. But hey, here we are. Anyways, in this case, Ethereum on the other higher term timeframes, not looking, too strong or too hot here either. Weekly timeframe will switch down tomorrow night upon the weekly closure, assuming that Ethereum is still below 2482, which it's decently far away from right now, about $60. 5-day time frame already coming down as well. 2653 is the magic number right there. 3-day time frame also headed down below 2715. 2-day time frame also headed down below 2775, and daily time frame also headed down below 2532. So we see all of those higher term time frames once again in concert with each other. It's hard not to be biased towards the downside. This is exactly what I've been saying with Bitcoin. It's like, look, as long as all of these higher term time frames are pointed in this direction, it's better off to be betting on downside direction. And that has been happening for Bitcoin, obviously, and now Ethereum falling through as well. Now, here's the thing for Ethereum. I guess there is a little bit of hopium here on the daily because it still has actually not broken the most recent daily price action pivot, that coming in from the low of Friday, the 6th of June, all the way at 23.85. But if and when it does close a daily below there, then very difficult for me not to see Ethereum come down to very low 2000s. Let's call it somewhere between 2000 even to 2100. Maybe it even just shits the bed from there. I don't know. But again, it's me coming in from many, many years ago. It is still hard to look at Ethereum as like, oh shit, is it really actually not going to make a new all-time high this cycle? Well, so far, no. Maybe the cycle ain't over. Probably isn't, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that Ethereum's going to be getting that boolah, massive green dildo to the upside anytime soon, at least. So, again, as long as those pivots are not met, I look at this one as questionable, let's say. And to the upside, where would I effectively switch around to being boolah-ish would be back above Monday's high. You're going to hear me say that a lot today. Anyways, moving on from there, XRP, another one which, at least it did make a new all-time high this cycle, barely, but it did, so I guess it puts it slightly better than Ethereum in this case. But as far as XRP goes, I do want to acknowledge that the weekly is, wait, what? No, that's wrong. Hey, what the fuck? My notes are wrong right there? Holy shit. Something terrible has happened. What was that coming in from? Wow, man. My brain is just fucking wrecked recently. I think it's all these damn painkiller drugs. Anyways, daily time frame right here. Yes, it is within a downtrend. Yes, it is on the precipice of breaking down into a new fresh low. But that price action pivot here coming in again from last Friday's low at 208 is still the number to beat. Closing below there. Yes, indeed, I would be looking for XRP to come somewhere down around about 180. That is going to be the daily 377 EMA. I think the weekly 55. Yeah, that's what my note was pertaining to. Okay, Jesus, man. Yeah. that is the most obvious, downside target upon any sort of further breakdown. But of course, going over the higher term timeframes, we have the same issue here on XRP as we did on, of course, Solana and Ethereum. And this one is going to be headed to the downside as long as XRP is below 282. It's well below that number right now. I have a very hard time seeing it reclaim that number by end of month. I guess the one point of hopium here is that XRP is still above all major moving averages on the monthly, but that can change around very rapidly because it is very close to the 5 EMA, which is 212, meaning that if XRP does close below 212 at the end of this month, I think that you're at least going to see 180 to open up sometime in July, and then maybe, maybe even lower. Again, as long as this thing is positioned to the downside, I don't look at any sort of macro rally as likely. I'm not saying it's going to remain to the downside, for forever, but again, we got the same issues here. Weekly time frame going to switch to the downside below 221 tomorrow night on the closer. 5-day time frame already headed down below 239. 3-day time frame also headed down below 217. 2-day time frame also headed freshly down below 218. Daily time frame also down below 222. Like, if it's going to break down or if it's going to move in any direction at this point, down is significantly more likely than up. To the upside, the only area in which I would start to really change around my opinion in that I'd say, hey, this thing actually has a low in and we should be preparing for some upside yet again, at least in the short/medium term, would be I almost said Ethereum, but XRP back above that last Monday high, the 16th of June, which is 233.7. So as long as it's below there, all bounces are just that, bounces before getting ready for continuation to the downside. Anyways, Sooie, let's get into some Sooie action. Let me bring up Sooie right here. I don't know why I didn't have it on my screen to begin with, but there she is, or there he is. We called a top on Sooie way back at the beginning of this year in late January. I got a lot of hate for this one. I'm getting a lot of hate for being bearish on basically any of these things. I wonder if the people who were being mean, sending me mean tweets and mean comments, I wonder if they'll ever apologize. Probably not, but who gives a fuck? Doesn't really matter anyways. As the wise, was it Teddy Roosevelt said, it is not the critic who counts. It is a man in the arena. And commenters, well, negative commenters, they can go fuck themselves. Anyways, no, of course. I'm wrong about stuff all the time, but at the end of the day, this one was certainly right, or at least right for right now. Looking at Sooie, yes, it is coming off of that 55 EMA, so if it wants to try a bounce here, that's fine. But just like many of the other ones that we looked at today, higher term timeframes are just not looking great for this one. Sorry, let me actually go to this chart. I want to see momentum also just for Sooie specifically. We got the same issues basically the whole way around. Monthly time frame continues to the downside below 421. It needs almost a 2x to get back above there. Okay. Sure, in 10 days, maybe. It's possible. It is crypto after all. But weekly time frame also down below 397. 5-day time frame also down below 346. 3-day time frame also down below 291. 2-day time frame also down below 309. Daily time frame also down below 289. Now you will notice that the lower end of those higher term time frames is getting super extreme there. So I do think that this one can bounce, and I do think most of these things can bounce in the short term. Maybe we can see a bounce before the end of the month and maybe brings it back above all these major pivots, and then I can be bullish. But until that happens, it can bounce on those, on those lower end of those higher term timeframes. But the higher term timeframes, again, still remain downside angled below those significant numbers. And, just looking at the weekly, looking at the monthly here, look, as long as Sooie's below the May highs, that becomes the new pivot for just maintaining a bearish bias. Like I said, I do think that is more likely to at least try a bit of a bounce here than not. And I think you could say the same thing about maybe Solana, or maybe not so much Solana, maybe Ethereum or XRP. But going back to Sooie here, if it does take another leg down, I would really be looking for it to undo the whole rally that began in April, back down to very low $2 region, somewhere down around $2.20 to $2 even effectively. It's going to, it would naturally take some time, but for right now, have to follow the trend, and this one is not necessarily your friend. As far as a monthly goes, we do see that this upwards trending regression on the price action pivots indicator would be coming in at current month exactly in alignment with the yellow 21 EMA, which is interesting to have that confluence there. That is at very, very low $2. That's 203. If we forecast out to next month, July, that would rise up all the way to 220. So I think somewhere down around there, it should bounce as well there. And, maybe it does, bounce enough to actually flip around the trends. But, that is still pretty decent downside kind of from where we're at right now. It's just the one thing that's holding me back from saying, hey, this thing wants to actually break down now is the weekly resting on that green moving average, which is the 55 EMA. A lot of the time you'll see petty bounces around this region. That is effectively where the last major move to the downside bottomed at. And we've actually seen several bottoms, for many of these things. Anyways, ending this with Bitcoin. You know what? We'll actually do some Carderpio as well. I get a lot of requests for that too. But ending the week on some Bitcoin. Bitcoin ended the week, I should say, on CME last Friday, so just a day ago. And that means that we have this weekly closure, which does really start to look like a weekly rejection here. With the last, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks closing red, not great. So, I'm looking at this as a rejection yet again of the same high that was put in late January. And, a corrective period is likely to be inbound, I imagine, throughout the rest of this month and into July. Yes, there will be short-term bounces along the way, of course, but, where do actually things turn around on the daily here for Bitcoin? Well, for Bitcoin, still 109 is a big pivot to the upside as long as you're below there. I think it's just better to be looking for this correction to drag onwards and southwards. The weekly time frame as the 10-day, the 10-day time frame is not closed, but the bi-weekly and the weekly time frame both are experiencing volatility contraction, meaning that the median on the weekly HPDR is going to be a general area of interest for a minimum corrective target. Again, we will see this one move probably up, I imagine, coming into the open of next week. So maybe it does come in exactly at the June lows. So, you get another chance at like 100 to 101,000 bucks. But again, that's a minimum target. Of course it can go lower, but you'd be expecting a bounce there, at least on the first pass. And it could be a pretty significant bounce, but looking at this one here, with Bitcoin, I think that this keeps it rather simple. If we go to the monthly, I really don't know when I look at the HPDR because I guess it all depends upon what it looks like coming into July. But as of right now, it's neither rejection nor acceptance. It's just oscillating between, just a lower end of the 30 level, and then of course the median as well. But I should acknowledge that, this is actually going to, oh shit, there is actually a lot going on here. Holy fuck, I completely goofed this one up. Yeah. Okay, so the monthly here is on the verge of closing below the median, which it will close below the median as long as it's below 126 by the end of this month, which is in less than 10 days now, for the first time since November of 2024, when this mega rally really began. That is an early indication of a change of behavior. That would be rather concerning. I'm very curious to see what this will do when we come into July, because it can flip around very, 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 very quickly. But as of right now, that would indicate to me that, we're going to go through probably a multi-month long correction. So summer, as usual, a very quiet period. And it seems to me like this one's going to be not so different. So yeah, I think we'll end things right there on Bitcoin. No, let's go over some Cardano. Everyone loves this one, but do you think it's really going to be different than everything else we've seen today? Nah, of course it will. Of course it will. It looks even worse. Well, it actually does look a little bit worse than some of the others, these other ones, because it is working on what would be effectively a descending triangle right here. Again, this one, it's kind of hard not to see it come back down to these lows from April and then also February of this current year. But there will be bounces along the way. Maybe the daily tries a little bit of a bounce first. Well, then I go down to the daily time frame. Less excited about something like that. Whether it bounces here or not, I don't really care. I do think that it's going to get down around, low 50 cents, 50 to 52 cents. I don't know, probably within this next week or two. Bearish as long as you're below the most recent price action pivot to the upside, which is 73 cents. And going over higher term time frame stochastic momentum, what do you know? Same monthly look as pretty much everything else. 90 cents is the pivot. Weekly time frame, same look, freshly turning down below 65 cents. 10-day time frame also down below 78 cents, not great. 5-day time frame also down below 73 cents. 3-day time frame also down below 60 cents. 2-day time frame also down below 64 cents. Daily time frame also down below 58 cents. Again, the lower end of those higher term time frames is so beat up. It really wouldn't take too much to get a lot of these things to bounce a little bit. So hey, if things do bounce a little bit, like, don't fucking hate me, but ultimately I would be suggesting that most of these things are very much likely to just put in yet another lower high. This one heavily bearish as long as you're below Wednesday, the 11th of June's high, which is again 73 cents. So yeah, that's all to say that this market's phenomenally fucking bullish, right? What about Farcoin? Farcoin's doing great, right? It's back down around its June lows. Well, I mean, to be fair, compared to all these other shitcoins, like Farcoin is objectively better, but I don't think it's going to do anything different, to be honest. Probably tries to bounce around this low. Probably does something like that. But yeah, alt season's going really, really well. So that's cool. And I'll just show you the one chart to kind of rule them all for alt season. Bitcoin dominance is, in my opinion, absolute fucking garbage. Although, you know, I mean, it has been going up, which you would expect. But this is the chart that you're really looking for to identify Bitcoin dominance. It excludes, most importantly, stablecoins, Bitcoin, and even Ethereum. It probably could even include Ethereum at this point, and then measure that versus Bitcoin. And this is a monthly time frame, by the way. It's having a fresh breakdown. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, happy alt season to everyone. Take the bananas out of your bungholes and put them in your mouth, because we need fucking food after going balls deep in these damn alts. Anyways, with all of that said, I'd like to wish you the best. Take care. Much love. And like I said, this might actually be the last weekend where I do weekend videos. So we'll see. I'll think about it more this week. And yeah, all right. Take care. Much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.